Alrighty. Welcome all to the final installment of the NFREC Quincy Centennial Series seminars. I am your co-host, Matthew Berger. If you're unfamiliar with me, I am a PhD student here at the NFREC Quincy studying plant pathology in Dr. Ian Small's lab. I'll be the host of today's talk, so if you have any questions, you can directly send them to me in the chat, or you can make a comment in the chat. Either one works, I'll be paying attention to it. I ask you now to take a moment to double check your microphone status to make sure you are muted. So I'm going to begin the timely introduction speech now. Now that we're situated, I'd like to begin by saying that as your host, it is an honor to be asked to do this, but I must confess, I didn't always intend to be in this position in agriculture. My winding academic career, I had aspirations of becoming a paleontologist. One of the subjects that I really enjoyed from that academic era is a concept known as uniformitarianism. While uniformitarianism is a large word, it has commonly been associated with the understandable phrase, the present is the key to the past. What that essentially means is that to understand, interpret, and speculate on the unseeable geologic past, you unfortunately cannot use time machine to do so. You need to take cues and clues found in the present to speculate on the past. While uniformitarianism doctrine is typically associated with natural laws and how they connect to the past, I think you'll see that the upcoming speculations on the unknowable future consist of challenges and solutions that are well-rooted in cues and clues that you can see in today's reality that are still bound by those same natural laws. While the nature of this talk is in the same temporal theme as the previous seminars, it does deviate from them. Many of the challenges presented here are from you, the audience. Your correspondence did not go unnoticed. Presenting these challenges and speculations to their solutions, our Northwest District Water Resource Regional Specialized Agent, Dr. Andrea Albertin, and assistant professors, Dr. Xavier Martini and Dr. Ian Small, covering areas of focus ranging from septic system management and groundwater contamination to semiochemical attractants and invasive pest entomology, and to machine learning, precision ag-based plant pathology. There is a wide net of expertise that has been cast today. Of that cast of speakers today, we begin with Dr. Xavier Martini.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen right now? Wonderful. So thank you everybody to be there today for this last series about the future of the NFREC. As a very first start, I'd like to go make a small jump in a few months ahead and see what's going to happen in the next year or so. In terms of faculty, we'll have the pleasure to have new horticulturist in January 2022 with Dr. Mohammed Saeed that will start the next year. We are in the process of hiring a new entomologist and new wildlife management specialist, as well as a regional specialized in water resource at Live Oak. And finally, of course, the big elephant in the room, we are hiring a new center director. So a lot of change in the next few months in terms of faculty and administration. I asked all the lab, to give me some updates, so some did, and I'll just go through what's going to happen in the different lab at the NFREC in the next year. So we have Dr. Lyos that's expected to have a new PhD student that will be based on the NSF grant she's just got on heavy metal stresses. We have Dr. Gonella Diaz as the Mariana Center. She will have 3 new students and 1 student transitioning to MS to PhD next year, so a busy year for her. In my lab, we're going to have a new PhD student. They're going to work on citrus, and it will be based on the USDA CPPM grant we get, and it will work on IPM of acetylene seeded in urban environment. The Live Oak Center, we're going to have a new indoor hydroponic container with also funded by a grant. Dr. Parr is going to have 1 new PhD student, 1 new postdoc. Dr. Knox continue to work with pollinators and work with ornamentals, evaluate ornamentals that benefit pollinators. And also very active with the gardens. The big band's gonna have a lot of new not equipment, but features, I would say, with new park bench, picnic table. So it will be very nice in the garden. We'll be able to have a lunch every day when it's not raining, I guess. And Dr. Dubo is going to have also a new student that will work on biogas and working on using an invasive species around of cactus we have as a biogas. And finally, for Dr. Small and Dr. Wright, they are also going to be very busy next year with one new PhD student, an NSF grant, a new predictive model tool, and FDEX grant, and USDA NIFA grant. So that's just the people that give me, updates. And so people are not listed. I'm sure they're going to be very busy next year too. But just gives you an idea of what's going on. So federal grant, new equipment, new students. So the center is really moving forward as usual, and a lot of good things coming next year. Andrea, it's your turn.
Hi, thanks, Xavier. I'm Andrea Alberton, and I just want to let you all know that in preparation for this talk, Xavier, Ian, Matt, and I got together and started brainstorming ideas about our next 50 years and what that might look like. And we quickly realized that we really needed the input and the help from our NFREC and Northwest Extension District colleagues. This so that we can really could really begin a meaningful dialogue about the challenges that we will face and how we can best prepare to address them. So what we did is we sent out a survey and we asked you to fill out the survey with two main open-ended questions. And we asked you, what do you think are the biggest challenges or opportunities that are likely to arise in the next 50 years? And second, we asked you, how should the NFREC and the Northwest Extension District be preparing to address each of these challenges and opportunities? We received, I'm having problems with, okay, let's see. We received 39 survey responses, and we're really blown away by the thought through responses, how much time you took. And we were struck by how many of you were thinking along the same lines. So who responded? We had a total of 39, as I mentioned before. 13 of you, 33% were NFREC faculty. 31%, so 12 of you, were Northwest Extension District faculty. 6 were NFREC staff, 15%. 4 of you were NFREC students and staff at the same time. There were 2 responses, so 5% from NFREC postdocs and 2 responses from NFREC students. So to analyze the survey, what we did is we read through your open-ended responses on challenges and opportunities, and we identified 12 broad categories. We then sorted your responses into these 12 categories, and here are the survey results. So what are the next big challenges? This is what you let us know. On the left-hand side, you can see the list of challenges identified. They go from land use change and population increase all the way down through to engagement and communication. And on the right-hand side, the bars represent how many of you indicated that this category was a major challenge. For example, for land use change and population, 19 of you, so 50% of the respondents, stated that land use change and urbanization was a major future challenge, and so on down the list. Some also thought that these challenges presented opportunities. So with land use change, for example, some identified this as an opportunity. So for example, an opportunity was that North Florida would become a key agricultural area as Central and South Florida became more and more urbanized. Again, we will address each of these major categories and the solutions that you offered in the remainder of our talk. But the way we're going to organize the talk actually is we're going to start with categories that encompass natural systems. So we'll start, and this was for 54% of your responses. So we'll start with climate change, land use change, pests and diseases, water resources, and ecosystem degradation. We'll then move on to agriculture, so economics, sustainability, and technology. And then we'll end the talk with challenges that related to social themes, such as regulations and policies, social justice, workforce capacity and engagement, and communication.
So the first theme will be the climate change. And so you're all aware of what's going on, but just give you some some perspective, I would say. This is the data from climate.gov, and as you can see here, we have an increase of carbon dioxide, but it's not the only other greenhouse gas. There are other greenhouse gas that increase. And what it means at the end of the day, at the end of each year, that we have the temperature on Earth's surface is always higher, almost higher than the year before. We have a constant increase in the temperature of Earth, and that have a lot of different impacts. And one impact for Florida that we may want to be aware of is the global average of the sea level that is constantly increasing. Not a lot per year. It's like 3.2 millimeters per year, but at the end, if you multiply this by 10 or 20, that starts to end up pretty high. So if you look at how Florida may be impacted roughly by this rise of the water, you see that mostly all area, all the coastline basically will be mostly affected by sea level rise. This is in blue. You can see the projection for 1 meter sea level rise, and you can see that especially for us, all the Wakula side may have something that the more severe coastal flooding on a regular basis, and I don't even speak about the south of Florida that may be even more impacted. In terms of other type of issue we may have is the overall the climate of our area will change, and so this is a prediction we get from again the different organisms working on that. And one of the things that they come up is, yes, the global temperature is expected to reach up to 1.5 Celsius degree, but does not mean that it will be constant over time. We're gonna have, for instance, more heat wave, which means that we will have more day with over 95 Fahrenheit, and that's something we not use right now. So expect to have in our area maybe between 40 to 50 days above over 95 Fahrenheit. That will have an impact also on the precipitation. As you can see on the right, it doesn't mean necessarily that we have a big change in precipitation. Blue mean that we will still have quite a slight increase of precipitation, but the big change you can see on the right is the day with dryness, or dry days. And in dry days, we expect our area to have a significant increase of dry days, meaning that the precipitation will be the pattern of rain will be a little bit disturbed. Not going to be as regular that we have right now. It's going to be more dry days and more big events in big storm. So extreme events are supposed to be more intense, and we expect also the warm season will be longer and the cold season shorter. As we speak about extreme events, a hurricane that is big deal in the Panhandle, I expect to increase in intensity, not be more frequent, but will be probably stronger. And that will have impact obviously on how we grow crops. Can we find opportunities? Maybe. First of all, there are critical needs of develop less carbon intensive production system, and that's already what we're doing. The best example I can give is what's doing at Mariana with the Durden lab. They're already working on new way to, innovative way to reduce the greenhouse gas in the cattle production. That the Carinata initiative led by Wright and Small, and where we try to have a crop-based fuel from plant. Also, the other opportunity you can see is all in the crops are gonna grow as the warmer season will be longer and the cold season will be shorter. Maybe we have opportunity to grow more cold susceptible crops. The one that come in mind, of course, is citrus. We know that citrus being a big a lot of success in the recent year. We expect it to increase, and will be really helped by the fact that winter may be a little bit more mild in the future. As we speak about climate change, that's have a direct impact on ecosystem degradation. When you speak about ecosystem degradation in your the survey, you cited soil health, natural resource, pollution, loss of biodiversity, habitat loss. One thing that would be very critical for North Florida may be a deforestation. We are an area where a lot of forest is very important, but it's also an area where we're gonna have a lot, we think that crops will increase a lot. So right now in Florida, we know that half of the land is a bit less, but 40% of the land is a natural forest. But however, every year we are losing roughly between 1.5 to 2 million hectares of tree cover. And for North Florida, it's expected to be a little bit higher. And this will be mostly transition to crops land. So that's something we will have to think about, how we can manage the needs for lands for agriculture and keep some tree cover in our area. One thing that I find interesting when we look at this, the perspective is they have some hope and some initiative that can be done. So this has been an article published in Nature last year, and in the view of this loss of biodiversity we have on Earth, the author identifies 6 potential action that can be taken and to reduce maybe this loss of biodiversity. And on the 6 action, you can see that some of them are really relevant to us, that increasing of the crop yield, meaning that if we're able to produce more on less land, obviously we will less need to remove tree cover, for instance, to produce food, or increasing a protected area. And the author think that around 30% of terrestrial coverage right now, if it's become protected, may be enough to protect most of the biodiversity. And obviously, we also need to increase the restoration. And again, the author think we need around 8% of this land to be restored. And the interesting thing is the author think that if we are doing this now, we will be able maybe to recover most of the loss we had in the previous year. So I think it was a very positive message. It's not, one of this. So it means that if we, the university and us at the University of Florida are able to work on this issue, may be able to kind of recover some, be able to save some of the biodiversity that we may have lost.
Okay, and so along the lines of that Xavier was talking about with the change in climate and change in species diversity, one consistent theme that people brought up was the potential for an increase in the number of invasive pests and diseases that will affect our agriculture and natural ecosystems in the future. On the right, you actually see a picture of rosette disease, and that's work that Dr. Parrott and Dr. Martini's labs were doing together. Basically, Florida has a lot of experience with dealing with new and invasive pests and diseases. In this case, the lower image is a mite that vectors the virus that causes the disease, the rosette disease. And the shrub rose industry is the largest in Florida, is the largest in the US, so it has a major potential for economic impact. What they have been trying to do in collaboration with other state agencies is to prevent the vector from becoming associated with the virus that does occasionally occur or is occasionally found in Florida. So it just emphasizes the importance of the role that we play in preventing these new invasives from becoming established and the impacts they can have. Other points that I think are major issues on the horizon are pesticide and herbicide resistance. So populations of weeds are becoming resistant to the suite of herbicides that are available, and the same is true of plant pathogens and pests that affect agricultural crops. And so what's happening is that the set of tools that producers have to manage these issues is decreasing, and it's going to make it more challenging to manage crops. There's also nuisance wildlife like feral hogs that are affecting agriculture in the southeast, and a lot of people are concerned about that and changes and increases in that. So there is an opportunity and a responsibility that we have in Florida to be a sentinel for US agriculture, because so many issues become established in Florida first. I think we have a responsibility to be a leading authority on the biology and management of these invasive species, and to prevent them spreading up into other parts, other major agricultural producing states. There are already efforts underway through extension to educate the public through outreach events, outreach education, I should say. So this is not a new initiative, it's just going to become probably more important.
Thanks, Ian. Next was land use change, sort of a major theme that you all identified. And responses that we put into this category included, of course, land use change, also urbanization, the availability of ag land, the loss of small farms and farmers in turn, and also having enough land to produce enough food to feed our ever-increasing population. So these figures that I've shown here really highlight the challenge that we're facing in terms of land use change in Florida. So the organization 1000 Friends of Florida, along with UF's GeoPlan Center and FDACS, produced a report looking at current land use, that was in 2010, and how it's expected to change by 2070 if those trends, the 2010 trends of land use change, continued. So on the left, what you see are the statewide 2010 baseline of developed land in red, and in green, what you see are protected or other lands. So just other lands that aren't developed but aren't necessarily protected. Population here was 18 million. But then on the right-hand side, you see how it's expected to change by 2070 if these trends continued. So we're projected to have 34 million people in this state, and you can really see this huge increase of urbanized land. It's particularly striking in Central and South Florida, but in the Panhandle, we also see a lot more development in our coastal areas, in the northern parts of our counties, in the Leon, sort of the Tallahassee area, and moving east, really Suwannee, in the Suwannee Valley. Suwannee County is expected to greatly urbanize, well, urbanize more than it is already, and of course, the Jacksonville area as well. Sorry, I have a delay. Here we go. So in preparing this talk, I was really struck by, of course, one of the major and the greatest threat or the major impacts of land use change and urbanization is loss of habitat. and which leads to loss of biodiversity. And we actually here in North Florida are in a major hotspot of biodiversity, and we have incredible unique habitats and endemic species. So this map actually shows the number of endemic species that are found in North Florida. And again, endemic species are species that only exist in one geographic area. So you can see in red, greatest number of species, and that's where we are really in all of these major taxa in terms of amphibians, birds, fish, mammals, reptiles, trees. And that just highlights the importance of how much we need to protect many of our unique habitats. So what opportunities or what solutions did you all offer? So opportunities, again, North Florida will be a key ag area, since Central and South Florida will be increasingly urban. Also talked about the opportunities for nature tourism and ecotourism because of our beautiful habitats. Solutions really centered around ag solutions. So developing production systems that minimize inputs and optimize productivity to produce more in a smaller area. Maintaining ag profitability so we can compete against urbanization, and the need for more interdisciplinary research and extension to address conflicts that we will have, and actually already have, in terms of urban ag and natural area interfaces, as well as collaborating or hiring faculty with these expertise. So the next category that I wanted to cover, I know we're moving quickly through these categories and they're major, is water resources. You talked about water quality and quantity, about water resource allocation, and how we could address these major problems. So we here in Florida are actually incredibly fortunate to have a tremendous amount of water resources around us. So from our coastal areas, streams, river, lakes, streams, to our groundwater. We're actually sitting on top of one of the most productive aquifer systems in the world, the Floridan Aquifer System. Unfortunately, many of our water resources are listed as impaired, which just means that they don't attain water quality standards that are set by the state. There are almost 2,600 water segments or portions of water bodies in the 11 regions shown here in this map that don't meet one or more water quality standards set by the state. And these standards, the most common ones, are usually mercury in fish tissue, presence of pathogens, bacteria really, like total coliform and E. coli, low oxygen concentration levels in water bodies, and excess nutrients. And the majority of us in this area that work on water quality are focused on nutrient reductions. So what did you offer in terms of how we could address these major water quality challenges? So a lot of it was continuing the work that we're already doing. For ag, it was continuing to develop and promote the adoption of ag BMPs that address nutrient management, irrigation management, and water resources protection, and also leveraging our stakeholder network. So working with agency partners and others in the region that are already working on ag BMPs to increase our adoption rates. So stakeholder groups that we're a part of include those in the Live Oak area, the Swanee River Partnership, and here in the Panhandle, we have 2 ag BMP working groups. In terms of horticulture and our natural resources extension and research faculty, again, continuing much of the work that we do. So this includes work on green industry best management practices, Florida-friendly landscaping, stormwater management, septic systems, and a few citizen science programs, Florida Water Watch and Lake Watch, just to name a few. So water resources has, of course, a second component, and that is water quantity that you all listed as a major challenge. And this figure shows how water is used by each sector in Florida. It was numbers were developed by FDEP. It shows percent of total water consumption, and the major users are domestic self-supply, which is people with wells, commercial or industrial use, recreational use, think of sports complexes, etc. Public supply, which is the water that we get in our homes, schools, places of work, and agriculture. And in 2015, the largest water users were in the agriculture sector, which represented almost 40% of water use, but that has slowly changed. So in 2020, this public water supply became the major user, and that trend is just going to continue into 2035. So the state actually projects that by 2035, we're going to have about 400 million gallons per day of water shortfalls. So what can we do? Where will this extra water come from? And it's a huge effort to work on these projects. So one is conservation. So things like more efficient irrigation in urban and ag areas. Reclaimed water, so treated wastewater that is used for residential irrigation. Aquifer storage and recovery. So for example, in times of low demand for reclaimed water, this reclaimed water can be injected back into the aquifer. Surface water storage and desalination, and using brackish groundwater, for example, for things like cooling water for power generation. So the idea is that through these conservation or these practices, we're working on meeting that projected water demand.
So the next major theme that connects with what Andrea was just describing, there was a consistent theme of the people mentioned was there will be increased pressure to minimize environmental impact of agriculture. And there's, because of the issues that you've just been hearing about, I think there's going to be increased pressure in terms of incentives and penalties from regulatory agencies to meet those environmental mandates. There's also increased consumer demand for sustainable products and sustainability in general. So there's going to be increased pressure downwards on everyone else that's producing those products. And there was also mention made of the need to reduce food waste. Also got a lag here. That's on the environmental side of things. In terms of ag sustainability and in terms of economics, people mentioned that there's an increasing challenge for producers to remain profitable. There was the viability of small farms was highlighted as an issue going forward, and there's increasing costs of inputs and labor, such as water, energy, fertilizer, crop protectants, and also increasing cost of land for agriculture because of that urbanization. There's also increasing international competition for local Florida producers. So on the right here is a recent article that was highlighting the potential impact of the tomato trade from Mexico could have on US growers, costing $250 million a year. So it's a major issue of concern to people. In terms of the opportunity here, with population increase and increased demand for ag products, there's probably going to be increased prices because of that. And North Florida will probably become more important in terms of agriculture and natural resources due to the land use change that will happen in other parts of Florida, especially if people emphasize sourcing their food locally. However, you heard the risk. With the risk of globalization also comes the opportunity in terms of access to new markets. There's going to be increased demand for alternative crops to enhance profitability for producers in Florida. And with climate change, there's potentially going to be the possibility for production of new crops, at least in our region. So there'll be more potential for production of subtropical crops in North Florida in the future. On the right, this is an image that just shows the projected change in suitability for different forest types. And if you look at North Florida, there's expected to be quite significant change in terms of the types of trees that will be adapted to our future environment. In terms of adapting to climate change and mitigating that, there's increased interest in carbon sequestration markets that is becoming a reality and potentially has some advantages for producers who could potentially economically benefit from that. And then lastly, ag technologies will provide the opportunity to improve efficiency and also profitability. So that moves us into the next common theme, which was agricultural technologies. And so it was mentioned that there will be that increases in mechanization will reduce job opportunities for unskilled labor. This is just the challenges really that I'm focusing on initially. There will be increased requirement for ag personnel with tech skills, and we to some extent already have a challenge with meeting our personnel needs. There will be increased costs associated with purchase and maintenance of new equipment because of the the technology that's associated with that equipment these days. And as our ag systems become connected, the Internet of Things, there's more vulnerability to cyber attacks. And up on the top right is a recent article that showed a ransomware attack on a farming co-op and the impacts that might have or can have. There's also the challenge of access to internet. So the lower map here on the right shows the US continent, and in red are the areas with poor internet access. So what it shows is that these technologies may become available, but unless we address this issue and access to broadband internet, they may not be readily usable by everyone. And there's also other issues in terms of bias, in terms of tech development favoring large-scale companies or large ag over small family farms. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that what we develop is also benefiting the smaller scale farmers. In terms of opportunities, there's obviously the technology has potential to improve or enhance efficiency and sustainability, such as precision agriculture. With more technology, I think it tends to attract more interest from youth into ag careers as they realize the diversity of ag careers that exist. And with increases in mechanization and automation, that reduces that unskilled labor requirement and cost, and also will increase the need for personnel skilled in operating advanced ag equipment. So up on the right was a recent article about how mechanical harvesters could be the secret to Florida blueberry growers' future success because of labor challenges that they have. And as automation happens, there's probably going to be improvements in terms of safety for labor because of the control systems that will be in place, and also improved traceability along the supply chain. So you'll be able to know exactly where your food came from, what farming practices happened at the source, which provides an opportunity to create value for people who are sustainably producing the crop. If it's just a commodity, there's no potential to distinguish how it was produced. So that I was already touching on workforce capacity, and this is a major future challenge. So we already have a shortage of trained workforce in ag, and that's probably going to get worse unless we do something about it. There's limited interest in ag careers for a number of different reasons, and we have this increased requirement for personnel with ag tech skills. So these are challenges, and it was also mentioned that there's a limited number of scientists in ag-related disciplines to be able to help address the challenges that we'll face. So as far as opportunities, NFREC can play a key role in workforce development, probably through partnerships with community colleges and other training institutions to help train personnel in ag, especially with ag tech skills. This is an image on the right that just, it's an infographic. It just showed that 6 out of 10 adults lack basically internet, computers, and technical skills. And the share of jobs that will exist will tend more towards high-skilled jobs, which is what we should be training people towards, because there is a high risk of automation of low-skilled jobs, low to medium-skilled jobs, whereas there's a much lower risk of automation for higher skill jobs. So this is just looking forward what we should be training people towards.
Yes, and you mentioned also regulation and policies, and I get the honor to cover that. So among other things, you mentioned resource allocation, and which is probably a very good point when you look at the right now the federal funding for agriculture that you can see has been declined since 2021. But in the same time, what was interesting is the funding for research and development, the private sector in agriculture has been increasing almost exponentially, thanks to all this new technology that Ian was mentioning earlier. So that's probably here opportunities to collaborate more with these industries, and some of us already do it, and that this trend will probably increase in the future. Another thing to consider is that we're not alone on Earth, and if US spending less on agricultural research, other countries have increased their spending in agricultural research. As you can see, China spent a lot of money right now to improve its agricultural system, as well as in India and Brazil following behind. So there are here some opportunity for us also to collaborate with this country and this emerging country to maybe also compensate to this funding that may decrease in the future from the federal government. In terms of regulation and policies, today farmers already have a lot of regulation to face, and I tried to find online some of the current regulation, and I come up a few like the Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, the Federal Insecticide Act, Fungicide and Rodenticide Act, Food Safety, lots of different regulation, and all this regulation came in response to an environmental threat. And as environmental issue will likely to increase in the future, we can only expect to have more and more regulation in the future. So a grower will face more and more legal challenge in the future, and it's probably there an opportunity to improve our extension efforts to explain better to stakeholder, the law and the regulation. That's something maybe we should think about in the future. In terms of what can happen in terms of regulation and more regulation, a good example with probably the pesticide regulation. On the left here, you can see it's the number of pesticides that have been approved in the US, but they have been banned in other countries like in Europe or in Brazil, meaning that you have 72 pesticides approved in the US for outdoor use that have been currently banned by European Union. So this all pesticides may at some point be also banned in the US, and that's something we need to be prepared, and we're not going to have maybe more and more chemistry available. It's probably going to decrease. And on the right, what's interesting is we may think that this ban came always from the government or from EPA, but in fact, it's been true in the 70s that most of the ban came from the EPA. But the more it comes, the more is the industry by itself. Is what we call the voluntary ban that just phase out the production of their pesticide because they give them bad publicity, they are very have a bad impact on the ecosystem, or just because they don't bring enough profit. So in fact, we are more regulation, but also more a reduction maybe of the chemistry we can use, and that's something we need to take into account in the future.
Thanks, Xavier. Another major category that you all talked about really and mentioned frequently was social justice. And this was actually a challenge for us because it's well out of the area of our expertise. But you said things like social justice were going to be issues, inequality, wealth disparity, access to healthcare, affordable housing, enough healthy food for everyone, and infrastructure needs. And these are major needs now and will likely only be exacerbated in the future. And so one thing, this health factors, and doing a little bit more research on the topic, seem to encompass most of the issues that you all identified into one metric. And what health factors do is they actually represent what influences the health of a population or county. And they're based on 4 types of measures. And these measures include health behaviors, so things like how many people smoke, how physically active is the population, what are the obesity rates, clinical care, how many people have access to adequate health care, how many people have medical insurance, social and economic factors like income inequality, median household income, education levels, and what percentage of children are in poverty levels, below poverty levels, as well as the physical environment, things like access to adequate air quality and water quality. And what this map shows, it's where Florida's 67 counties rank in terms of health factors. So the lighter the blue color, the higher the rank. Lowest ranking counties are in dark blue, and this means that these dark blue counties exhibit lower rates of healthy behaviors. They have less access, populations in them have less access to adequate health care. There are lower education levels, lower median income, and potentially poorer water and air quality as compared to higher ranked counties. This is really alarming because you see that in our area in North Florida, many of our counties rank among the lowest in the state for these health factors. So how can we address these challenges? And especially since this is not our area of expertise, I reached out to an expert actually, Kendra Zamoyski, who's our regional family and consumer sciences agent for the Northwest Extension District here at the NFREC. And basically what she mentioned was that all of the factors that you all identified in the survey, FCS calls the social determinants of health. Oh, sorry about that. So collectively, it's the work that they do in family and consumer sciences. And so this work includes nutrition and food safety, health and wellness, finance and home ownership, all the way to community development. And this work also encompasses and explains a lot of their new outreach and partnerships with UF Health that includes implementing 13 telehealth sites across the state, many of which are in the Panhandle. So I really wanted to highlight FCS's work on these issues because I think there's a great opportunity for collaborating with FCS faculty in the district, as well as on campus to conduct interdisciplinary research looking at these social determinants of health.
Okay, and the last part is the engagement communication. So some of you cited how we're going to evolve in this social medias and social networks environment with this disinformation and fake news that growing. One thing to consider is where the people get their information nowadays, and this is it's kind of interesting to see that now most of the people under 65 years old, they take their information on social media, and only people older than 65 years old will really look at networks news to get their information. So really mean that it is where really the information now go through, and it's where we need to be present if you want to convey the information we have to convey. Obviously, this is not fake news, and we saw that with really with the COVID-19 vaccines can be have a huge consequences. In agriculture, probably the biggest story we have is on GMO. We have the GMO that appear in the market, and right away we have this disinformation, fake news coming that may be bad for your health, may impact the environment, and that really lead to civil protest. I can tell you, I'm French. We have people that went in GMO crops and removing GMO, and that leads to the industry to have this non-GMO project initiative, and industry try to avoiding using GMO to please the clientele, and that's despite the fact that some GMO are very good for the environment. For instance, BT corn, we know it decreased the amount of insecticide use. So we need to really be careful with this new fake news. Disinformation can appear with new technology like CRISPR and RNAi. All this will be the target probably of fake news and disinformation. So there are obviously a lot of opportunities here that first and foremost will be increase your presence on social media. Most of the people now look at YouTube more than they read, PDF or articles. So probably be sure that we have a video production that's complement a writing document, and also use all this Zoom and Team and all this communication tool to improve our communication between us and but also with the clientele. And some of you really underline the importance of 4-H and the program we do to school to really try to give an alternative to what people can read on social media. As a 4-H and extension, we can really have an impact, we think, on how the information is conveyed. As a conclusion, instead of giving you our conclusion, we wanted to give you your conclusion. This kind of quote that summarizes, what we said, that really the big things would be to produce more on less, with less land and with less water, educate publics to climate change, but to other things, encourage interdisciplinary research, and the hiring of new faculty will be very important. We need to address things that probably are not currently addressed. And I think it's what I tried to do with this new hire, with the new horticulturist. We try to have somebody that will work with plant stress. So with climate change, we would try to get people working at the landscape level for the entomological position. So we try to address this position already. So a way for us to say that it's not just the beginning, it's just the beginning of the NFREC. It's not the end, and we are ready to another 100 years. And so to finish, I would like to offer you a travel to in 100 years, what the NFREC may look like in 100 years. So are you ready? Let's go. So in 100 years, you see we have beautiful new building, well renewed, and we have a new center director. So that's been done with the artificial intelligence department. They found a way to not change our center director every 3 years. Now it's here, we can have it for forever. I will have some change in my life. I probably get some googles, in 100 years, I expect to not see as bright as right now. And of course, maybe, hopefully, I really have hopes that Mars can be part of Florida, and we have a extension County agent there working for us. So anyway, that's to end on a light note, but we think we still have time to discuss this presentation. We'll be more than happy to discuss this with you.
Thank you all. We do have a comment in the chat. Santosh says that growers, let's go back up. Growers still want more returns from their land. How far can we help? How far can we help to increase the profitability of farming through our research? As ag science researchers, what should our messaging and thought processes on helping growers to increase farm profitability?
Want to answer that?
I can try and make a comment related to that. I mean, I think that their profitability is going to be impacted by a function of the price they can obtain for the products that they produce and the costs that are required to produce that product. So on the one hand, our research goes towards minimizing the costs of production to some extent, and also maximizing profitability in terms of the quality and quantity of what they can produce. So that could be any crop or animal product that's produced. So I think there are many, many different ways. I guess all of the different disciplines that are represented have one or other impact on that equation, basically. That's how I'd respond.
Before everyone takes off, I would like to get a poll from Charlene on hiring priorities. If you wouldn't mind choosing one of those.
Can you see the poll?
We can.
Yes. Okay.
And maybe also to say, Matt, that if they have another idea of someone we haven't thought of, that they can type it in the chat.
How do you see the poll?
while the poll is going, I think just on behalf of us presenters, I think we want to thank everyone for participating in that survey. I know everyone gets caught up, you get a million surveys, but really, I think it was very helpful for us to see what everyone is thinking, and it was very. We spent a lot of time just discussing all of the results and putting this together because it was engaging, just to think about how the future is going to impact us here locally, and really the huge grand challenges that we face, and we're only going to be able to impact them by working together across our different disciplines and with the partners that we have, so the stakeholders and both public and private that we have. So really we need to work together more than ever before.
There is a comment from Lydia saying computer science, and I would certainly agree with that. There needs to be someone here who is versed with IoT and small computer integration into agro technology and how we do our sensor development.
Can I make one comment, Matt?
Yes, good.
It's just a comment, and I think these are all, first of all, I just want to commend the three speakers for doing such a difficult job, because it's not easy to bring that large perspective into 60 minutes and then putting it in the context of where NFREC fits. It's a very difficult job. So kudos to you guys, because often we talk about agriculture being in a vacuum and we tend to provide solutions to a problem and looking at it only in a vacuum. But now you've given us just mind-blowing connections that ag has to everything around. So it's not an ag problem that we're solving, it's a community problem we're solving, it's a global problem that we're solving. So kudos to you guys. And one other comment I wanted to make was, we probably cannot get 7 or 8 new hires in this facility. However, I think what has happened with this talk is we have identified those gaps and take those gaps and reach out to our colleagues on campus and fill in those gaps. So those engagements with campus become more compelling and more deliberate rather than random. So I just wanted to make that comment that maybe we don't have everybody here, but we can engage, we can reach out.
I think it's a good point, Shia. We cannot hire 10 more people, but so it would be important in the future to be sure when we hire people that they have, skills that can really complement this area. And again, I think it's what we're trying to do with this 3 new hire. The wildlife guy person will work on conservation. The entomologist will work on restoration, also on landscape issue. The horticulturists will work on stress management, so how we adapt to climate change. So I think we will need to add to the position but we cannot hire 10 people to address all this issue, that's for sure.
I have a question for Xavier, if I can.
Good.
I noticed that Xavier, you're going to send a county agent to Mars.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's
my
to
hope.
get rid of. It might be to get rid of one, but let's assume that that county agent is on Mars. I hope that you still have the ability to communicate with a specialist at NFREC when that county agent gets on Mars. So
with Zoom, no, I think you can. That's my hope.
Very good. Very, very good presentation, you all.
I think we'd be limited by the speed of light in that data transfer.
That would be awesome.
The one point that I did want to make, just from my perspective, we have all the different faculty members who work here and have our expertise. We work together in various teams, but I think more than ever to address the challenges, we need the coordination, program coordinator to help bring people together to actually meet the challenges. Like for one, the request for proposals from major funding agencies take a lot of effort to bring everyone together and organize that. So if I had to make a plug for one type of position and person that we need, it's a sort of central NFREC coordination kind of position.
I just want to make one point here. All 3 of our speakers today were manipulating one PowerPoint and had seamless transitions from one speaker to the next. That was very well done for you guys.
Just make one other comment. if I can, that in the process here with the interviews for the center director, it's been repeated a few times that the need for communications person, an exterior communications person to coordinate those messages from NFREC out to the public to get better information. So not necessarily a faculty position, but one that we've talked about in the past in NFREC, and seems to keep on coming back around to have somebody dedicated specifically to that purpose. But just thought I'd throw that in there.
All right, do we have any more commentary? I saw something in the chat here. Oh, no, Gary Knox. That was just a comment. All right, cool. Thank you all for coming. If there's no more questions.
Thank you very much for your time, all of you, and